Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Maciej Kokoszko. I work at the University of Łódź, which is located in the far off Poland. By my side, there is Zofia Rzeznicka, or Zofia Rzeznicka, who works at the same university and has been a long-standing collaborator of mine. She works for the so-called Galeno Center, which is one of the most important research centers at the University of Łódź.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are absolutely delighted that we were invited to present a lecture during this year's edition of Colloquio de las Bebidas. We would also like to congratulate you on the 85th anniversary of the founding of the National School of Anthropology and History and the 15th anniversary of the founding of the Anthropological Research Institute of the National Autonomous University of Mexico.
And today's lecture of ours reads Galeno on medicinal wine, or a story of a preference for white vintages. And let me start by saying that almost everyone knows that wine played an exceptional role in the Greco-Roman world. And there are a plethora of literary sources that can prove this statement. It is of the key importance for our line of reasoning that in medical treatises of that period it was described both as a beverage with considerable nutritional value and a medicament of great importance. This dual role of wine was tackled in detail by ancient doctors, and especially by those who took interest in dietetics and pharmacology. Additionally, their works also speak a lot of its role, of the role of wine, of course, in everyday life in antiquity. Therefore, in our talk, we will first and foremost discuss the role of wine in ancient medicine, but on the basis we will also try to demonstrate how varied its choice was in that period.
And in order to fully understand the medical output on wine, first let us examine the medical theory concerning how foods, drinks, and medicines were able to cure the ill and restore their health, focusing on two branches of medicine that gave us the clearest picture of the issue, namely dietetics and pharmacology. When it comes to ancient doctors, the greatest impact on the development of the two came from Galen of Pergamon, active at the turn of the 2nd and the 3rd century AD, who refined and systematized the concept of the therapeutic function of food. His dietetics defined food as nourishment, which, due to its processing and absorption, ultimately was turned into human flesh, bones, tendons, etc. The issue was of such vital importance that Galen devoted a separate treatise, which is today known as the Alimentorum Facultatibus, to the nature of key foodstuffs and drinks, as well as discussing them in many other of his works. Pharmacology, in turn, treated foods and drinks as medicines, because physicians believed that the vast majority of them affected the characteristics of the body, and as a result, Galen also analyzed the properties of food and beverages in his most important work on pharmacology, which is known as the Simplicium Medicamentorum Temperamentis ac Facultatibus.
This role of food and drinks, including wine in therapeutics, stemmed from the theoretical assumptions on which medicine was based, and which Galen, relying on the authoritative figure of Hippocrates, active in the 5th and 4th centuries BC, or more precisely on the contents of his work, the Natura Hominis, expounded in Book 1 of his own book, the Elementis ex Hippocrate. So, out of eternal matter, which was termed by the Greeks chyle, and according to the four equally eternal fundamental proprieties called poietetes, nature, that is physis, created the primary elements common to the whole animate and inanimate world, which were termed stoicheia. There are four of these, like the four poietes, and they are earth, water, and fire, which by Hippocrates and Galen were also called coldness, dryness, moisture, and heat. This tetra, due to its mixing and interplay, was the creator of the whole visible world, so the phenomena, and therefore also of plants and animals. In the latter, including man, this mixture forms organic juices, which are called by Galen stoicheia of the body, and which determine proper development and health. Humans require food and drink, which are essentially a mixture of cold, dryness, moisture, and heat, in other words, of earth, air, water, and fire. And in the event of illness, they require a substance which is capable of exerting a more or less powerful impact on the mixture, called a medicine, which, though not meant to nourish, is composed of exactly the same stoicheia as food and drink. In consequence, dietetics and pharmacology became synonymous with the knowledge of, firstly, the properties of the substances consumed by man, secondly, of how to process these substances, that is, how to modify them under the influence of the four stoicheia, so that they gain the full potency needed for a given treatment, and ultimately how to apply them for therapeutic purposes, explaining the method, the frequency, and the time of the administration. It has been already stated by myself that Galen pictured himself as a follower of Hippocrates. No wonder that his main deliberations on wine were based on reflections included in the Dieta in Morbis Acutis, which Galen, ascribed exactly to Hippocrates. He often quoted the data included therein in their entirety, like he did in his De Placitis Hippocratis et Platonis. The same collection of information, however, had also a fundamental impact on Galen's deliberations of wine, included in other of his works, such as De Alimentorum Facultatibus, De Methodo Medendi, De Rebus Boni Melique Suci, De Sanitate Tuenda, or De Fictu Attenuante.
Galen often resorted to simple quotations from Hippocrates' works. Such a situation also takes place in the Placitis Hippocratis et Platonis, where he completely identified with the teachings of the father of medicine, included in the Dieta in Morbis Acutis, quoting the words of his great predecessor as the best means of demonstrating his own views. Galen's discussion of wine in the Placitis Hippocratis et Platonis concerned those beverages that are appropriate in the everyday diet of a healthy human and focused on wide varieties of the beverage. Thus, referring to Hippocrates' works on sweet and dry white wines, he started with the sweet ones, maintaining that their drinking results in lesser strain for the head than drinking the dry ones, and that sweet vintages interfere with the drinking person's consciousness less. They also move through the digestive tract faster than the dry ones. On the other hand, they contribute to the enlargement of spleen and liver. They are not recommended at all for people with predominance of yellow bile, that is, in hot and dry temperaments, and as in such body constitutions, they trigger thirst. Although sweet wines contribute to the generation of gases in the body, they do not cause flatulence. Neither are they effective in the production of urine. On the other hand, They effectively stimulate removal of the discharge from the chest. The above words clearly indicate that dry white wines were had opposite qualities, and accordingly they quench thirst fast, cause acute headaches, lead to fast intoxication, are slower in their movement along the alimentary tract, do not have a negative impact on the spleen and liver, and ultimately are more effective than the sweet ones in purging the body due to their stimulation of the production of urine. As for other kinds of wine, Galen added that yellow, that is, mature white, and dry black wines, or as we call them today, dry red, can be used in acute diseases only in the absence of dry white vintages. And in order to allow yellow and black ones, the doctor has, however, first make sure that his patient does not suffer from headaches, does not show tendencies to impaired consciousness as a result of wine drinking, does not complain about problems with spitting out secretion from the chest, has not experienced urinary retention, and his feces are adequately moist and contain visible particles of digested food. The fragment means that in acute diseases, yellow and red wines were virtually out of use. The above fragment is one of the most distinctive examples of principles followed by science of wine advocated by Galen. The author claimed that his competence in enology was based on the best tradition of Greek medicine, that is, on the authority of Hippocrates. Galen's words were probably supposed to reinforce the value of the doctrine he followed. However, the text simultaneously suggests that Galen was acquainted with the existence of other medical doctrines on the subject. His hesitation in specifying them can be interpreted, on the one hand, as his dissociating from doctrines other than those of Hippocrates, and on the other, as their negative assessment. As regards the essence, Galen's teachings on wine were based on the preference for dry white wines. These were said to be safest for healthy human and each of his patients, irrespective of the ailments they developed.
Of the above-mentioned yellow and black wine varieties, more attention was paid by Galen to the yellow ones. Data on this subject is virtually missing from the Placitis, Hippocrates, and Platonis, but abounds in, for example, the Methodomedendi, where mature yellow wines were described as the basic medicament in treating acute diseases, including the so-called syncope, that is a loss of physical strength resulting from the impact of yellow bile on the cardia of the stomach. Galen explains that yellow wine ought to be administered in such cases since it is warming by nature and therefore stimulates assimilation of food in the ill. As a result, the patients regain their previous strength, while under the influence of wine on the stomach, food displays no tendency to remain in the organ, but is processed on a steady basis and released from from the stomach regularly. Galen explains that in order to treat patients with syncope, the selected yellow wines should be fairly thin, mature, and have a good aroma, but at the same time no bitterness, which often happens to develop in old vintages. Bitter ones, in turn, are considered to be inappropriate because they are of no internal balance. nor they are nourishing. Besides, their bitter flavor is capable of irritating the gullet. Accordingly, as Galen summarizes his discussion, the selected varieties of yellow wines should be dry, but not strongly astringent. They must be effectively warming. They should promote digestion and assimilation of food, help alleviate the detrimental effect of yellow bile, and strengthen the stomach. Galen is specific about vintages that should be taken into consideration. The best wines in the category are Surrentinos, Signinos, Sabinos, Tiburtinos, and Marsos. All of them were produced in Italy.
Thus, while white and dry wines were good for everyday consumption, and mature yellow were, according to Galen, good for treating patients suffering from acute diseases, black wines were virtually neglected in the analyzed texts. It is his De Victu Attenuante that answers the question why. In the said work, the author expresses verbis maintained that strongly dry, black, and thick wines did not have a good reputation, and that was why many varieties were not commonly known, which means that they did not make a good name on the Mediterranean market, although their production was ubiquitous in the entire world known to Galen. Therefore, tradesmen were not willing to risk buying them from manufacturers, or having purchased them, they did not invest much to publicize such beverages. What is more, as the doctor of Pergamon wrote, it was inappropriate socially to serve such black vintages during a symposium or wedding reception, or use them as an offering to gods or during any other social occasion. Galen explained, by means of his medical knowledge, the cause for this unwillingness to drink dry dark vintages on the part of purchasers. Notably, wines of this kind were said to be carminative, move through the body slowly, and in addition, suppress the excretion of both feces and urine. They would remain in the abdominal cavity for a long time, quickly go sour in the stomach, and provoke vomiting. Their only good side was that when drunk in small amounts, they were capable of putting a stop to diarrhea. However, Galen opined that even such wines could be drunk with no visible harm to health. As an example, he gave two vintages that were produced in his native Asia Minor, namely the one obtained in Aigai in Aeolis, and another made near Pergamon, in the vicinity of Perpenere. Inhabitants of these areas drank each without harmful effect, not only having become accustomed to their consumption, but also having learned to refrain from drinking such wine to excess. Last but not least, Galen maintained that both wines were nourishing, and he knew many young people who lived in the above-mentioned places, who had strengthened their bodies with this kind of beverages, as Galen put it, not worse than with pork, that is, by means of a diet analogous to that typical of the athletes.
So let's come to a summary. Discussion of Galenic texts proves that the presented fragments of Galen's works indicate the universal presence of wine in the diet and the diversity of the wine market in the 2nd and 3rd century AD. They also clearly demonstrate how advanced was the theory of wine in ancient medicine and how competent on the corpus of knowledge Galen was. On the other hand, his words show the existing preferences of the consumers. First, his data concerning dark wines refer primarily to those from Asia Minor. Notably, discussing dark vintages, Galen writes about the two above-mentioned wines from Aigai and Preferencia. In turn, in Cilicia, the wine called Abates was produced, which was described as black, thick, dry, or sweet. From Meonia in Lydia came another two dark wines named Karinos and Therinos. In Galatia, in turn, Skibelitis was produced, which was characterized by Galen as thick and black. Finally, in Galen's Linguarum sem Dictionum Exoletarum Hippocratis Explicatio, he also mentioned wine called Pramnios. It was produced in Smyrna, and the doctor described it as black and dry. Equally, thus Galen implied that the production of dark wines was limited outside Asia Minor. Of the beverages, he mentioned only Therios, which was made in Crete, was a black wine. Second, Galen's data induced the conclusion that dry dark wines from his times did not belong to the group of coveted commodities on the Mediterranean market, which is why they probably did not find many enthusiasts in major cities of Imperium Romanum. Thus, since they did not constitute a brand in the commercial sense, their importance was usually only local. Only black and sweet ones, such as Skibelites or Therios, found a bigger market. It goes without saying that red wines with lower sugar content were not usually maturated, but instead they were drunk as young. However, because black wines can potentially be left to mature, as it is done in contemporary winemaking, the fact that merchants at the time of Galen considered trading in dark and dry wines to be unprofitable should be regarded as an indication of the contemporary fashion for wines of other kinds. And third and final conclusion, as Galen suggests, at least the Italian market in his time was dominated by fair-colored vintages. Accordingly, one can conclude that it was the producers of Italy that dictated the contemporary vogue to the detriment of those who had their vineyards in other parts of the Mediterranean. And this is basically it. We've finished, and now we would like to thank you for your attention, and of course we hope that we will see next time either in Mexico or preferably in Poland. So welcome to Poland. So see you next time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.